For my final project, I wanted to look at the Cruz to Bishop Oscar Romero, Martyr of El Salvador by Michael Tracey. It's a very interesting work, and it's also Michael Tracey I find to be a very interesting artist. Although there's not a lot of scholarship or accessible information, so this was kind of difficult to research, but that's also what made it fun. Why I chose this work is, in looking at it, there was a lot of iconography and symbolism that I could recognize. Also familiar with who Archbishop Oscar Romero was and his philosophies and what those were. So I'm looking at this work as not only a response and reaction to what happened to the Archbishop himself, but also as a modern reliquary that kind of explores the violence that faced this person in life and the overall violence and horrors of life, but also the hope and promise of God's love. Here is a recent picture of the artist Michael Tracey. Michael Tracey, a brief biography. He was born here in the United States in 1943. He was raised Catholic. I'm not aware or could find information if he still is a practicing Catholic. Tracey is a multimedia artist. He has made paintings, sculptures, installations, films, and performance art. Tracey likes to deal with abstraction, and he doesn't use the human form or represents humans much in his work. It is rare, but he uses minimal objects to represent the presence of people or of traditions or rituals that people will do. Michael Tracey, through his work, also provides his commentary and brings awareness to human rights issues that are ongoing in Latin America. That is something that is fundamental to his work, but that is something that he personally cares about, and he ties this a lot to his faith and his upbringing and Catholic values. The sculpture that I have chosen for my final project is Cruz to Bishop Oscar Romero, Martyr of El Salvador, which Michael Tracey started in 1980 after the assassination of Archbishop Oscar Romero. This work is a response and a reaction to a specific moment and to a specific person, the assassination of Oscar Romero, his life, his teachings, and how he changed and affected the people of El Salvador. But it also confronts the violence at the time that led up to the assassination of the Archbishop and all the violence that occurred after this moment in time in El Salvadorian history. The assassination of Oscar Romero is seen as the incident which led to the start of the Salvadorian Civil War. Archbishop Oscar Romero was advocating for the Salvadorian people. At that time, the majority of the country was very poor and didn't have access to a lot of basic necessities, medicines, or utilities, and also capital. While he was not politically involved, he would just advocate on behalf of the poor based on the teachings of the Bible and Christ. This resulted in him calling out political oppression from the far right at the time. The night before his assassination, on the radio, he actually pleaded for the Salvadorian death squads to stop killing their brothers and sisters. And while it is unknown who assassinated the Archbishop, it is highly believed that because of that broadcast, it was the far-right death squads that carried out his assassination the next day. March 24th, 1980, the Archbishop was completing the homily when he was assassinated in the middle of Mass. Images of this moment were actually photographed and documented and printed across the world. And it's these photographs that Michael Tracey saw when he was completing a residency in Mexico at the time. Michael Tracey actually saw the cover of a magazine titled Alarma with one of these photos on the cover. It shocked and stunned him. Tracey began to research and learn about who the Archbishop was, what his philosophies and teachings were, and the larger context of El Salvador at that time. This is what starts Tracy on his larger artistic activist career, but it is also what is at the center of this sculpture. Tracy includes this magazine cover in his work. It is at the base of the work next to another framed photograph and surrounded by flowers. So this is supposed to be the identifier of who this is for, who this cross commemorates and venerates. I couldn't find the exact magazine cover, but the images of Romero's assassination moments after are well documented, so I included a few photographs of that. They are, again, highly graphic and disturbing, so I'm including a little warning, so if anyone wants to fast forward, please do. And then I included another image to let you know when it is safe to return, and there will be no more very violent imagery. Welcome back to any of those who have skipped. So, as I have mentioned, one of the photographs at the bottom of Romero's assassination is supposed to identify who this is for, who this cross is for. The cross at the top of the pedestal is supported by two purple beams. This cross is meant to emulate a processional cross. So the beams are meant to be beams that you could, in theory, lift with other people and carry across a space. But Tracy has not done that or asked anybody to do that, but it could. And the processional cross is something that is very recognizable in the Catholic faith. Tracy's work touches on the horror and the shock and sorrow of this event that was felt throughout the world, and especially to the people in El Salvador, through the dead and dying flowers and wreaths at the bottom, with the photo of the event, specifically tying Romero to this cross. But there are also other implications of violence and horror in this piece. Eye moves up the cross, you see two nails at each side of the cross representing where Christ's hands were nailed in, and there are also bull horns on both sides of the cross, which would be around where Christ's head and his crown of thorns were. Tracy hasn't given any direct explanation to what these bull horns mean. In looking at the dead flowers at the bottom with the photo of the assassination and these bull horns coming out of the cross and the nails representing Christ and his crucifixion, the ideas of horror, violence, and death are clear. They would be clear to anyone familiar with the specific event of the Archbishop, but also with just the crucifixion of Christ. It's unclear if Tracy himself saw the Archbishop as a martyr. That was the overall feeling and opinion of the people of Latin America, especially of El Salvador and of the church. This was someone who was dedicated to helping the poor and to spreading the teachings of Christ, who died senselessly at the hands of people. The sculpture also holds images and symbols of hope. The hope of the people, the hope of Romero's message living on. Romero famously said, "If they kill me, I will rise again in the people of El Salvador. If they manage to carry out their threats, as of now, I offer my blood for the redemption and resurrection of El Salvador. If God accepts my sacrifice of life, then may my blood be the seeds of liberty and the sign that hope will soon become a reality." Tracy's work offers hope. Hope to the people of El Salvador, hope to the people of Latin America. He dedicated his work to their perseverance in their quest for justice and liberty. And he could not have foreseen that on the first day of peace, on February 1st, 1992, in the capital of El Salvador, flew out of the cathedral a banner with the image of Archbishop Oscar Romero with the message, Archbishop Romero, you have risen in your people. Tied to the cross are 36 small boxes. These boxes are crudely painted and use an array of bright and vivid colors. Because these boxes are simple in form, there is no clear idea of what they are supposed to symbolize, but art historians have linked the shape of these boxes to Sienese frames, as seen here, 2 frames of Madonna and Child. The role of Catholicism in Tracy's life and his art is very prevalent. So we can infer that these boxes do have a religious meaning, but our historians have not been able to decide on one interpretation, and that is due to the simplification of form and ambiguity that Tracy leaves for the viewer. St. Louis University Museum of Contemporary Religious Art has postulated that these boxes are supposed to be a representation of milagros. Milagros come from the Mexican culture and are small, traditionally silver charms in shapes of different symbols, body parts, or religious icons. A person will take one of these milagros and leave it as an offering to a saint. The milagros have a variety of shapes, and each shape has its own specific meaning. So the specific shape that you leave as a votive offering is a specific request or prayer that you are asking for. I disagree with the theory of the milagro. I believe, and I agree with others who hypothesize, that they are meant to be a loose representation or symbol of a scapular. Those are associated with Mexican culture and they are not in Salvadorian culture, but a scapular is more widely recognized and practiced across the Catholic diaspora. Devotional scapulars are a physical reminder that one wears of the promise that they have made to live up to the values and teachings of a specific saint or the larger ideas of Catholicism. Romero deeply impacted the people of El Salvador, and he still does today. This is why I tend to lean more toward the theory that these are scapulars and that they are the reminder of the promises, the philosophies of Romero that will be carried out through the hearts and the minds of the Salvadorian people. The beatification, part of the process of someone being canonized and becoming a saint for Archbishop Oscar Romero, took place in 2015. We saw reliquaries dedicated to the saint be erected all over the world. At a large mass for the beatification for Romero in San Salvador, the capital of El Salvador, members of the church carried this large processional reliquary, carrying the blood-soaked shirt that the Archbishop wore the day of his assassination. The reliquary and the sculpture have very similar characteristics. Not that Tracy could have predicted what would have happened in 2015, but knowledgeable about Catholic reliquaries, he, in my opinion, and what I argue, created his own. Both the sculpture and the reliquary have a representation of Romero's assassination. Tracy's sculpture has the photograph, and the reliquary of the Salvadorian cathedral has the blood-soaked shirt itself. Second, the reliquary has the same house shape as the small votive offerings hung from the cross in Tracy's sculpture. These house-type figures can also be read as nativity-shaped figures, bringing us back to the teachings of Christ. And finally, both are processional objects to be carried. While Tracy's is never formally carried in any celebration, it gives the idea of being carried of a celebration, of a procession, of an honoring of Romero that has taken place, while the reliquary itself was taken to celebrate the beatification of Romero in 2015. Both the reliquary and the sculpture depict violence and death. Whether you're Catholic or not, the images of someone dying or a bloody shirt, these two violent representations of death and the assassination of an archbishop do stir strong emotions in a viewer and offer a chance for personal reflection. It doesn't need to be religious, but just on being kinder to one another, the general idea of the crucifixion of Christ and the promise of resurrection, and his teachings to be kind to fellow men.